This is Inside the Game, where passion meets precision. Jonathan Turner, Nathan Wangler, and John Natale are your hosts, breaking down every goal, every controversy, every match that matters. From the heart of American soccer to the global stage. No fluff, just football. Weekdays at 9 a.m. live on YouTube, Roku TV, Facebook, Twitter, and all listening platforms.
Welcome to Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. Now, here are your hosts, Jonathan Turner, Nathan Wangler, and John Natale.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Friday.
Turn off the loop.
I don't want to turn off the loop.
But it's going to start again.
No, it's not. I faded it out. We're good, man. I promise you. I figured out the details this morning. It's going to go out on its own. Look at that.
Wow. Look at that.
I finally figured it out.
There we go.
But it is Friday morning. It is the 23rd. Again, I say this every Friday. Your week might be coming to an end, but ours is just getting started, and it is entirely the case. And we are excited for this Friday. Big day of games, big weekend of games, a record weekend for us once again. Last week we broadcasted 55 games that we produced last weekend, Thursday through Sunday. This weekend we have 88 that we will do Thursday through Sunday, and with two nightcaps on Monday. So maybe we'll just add those in, make it even 90. Why not, right? But tomorrow we have 37 broadcasts scheduled here on the platform.
Wow.
We have 13 tonight, and then we've got a whole bunch more on Sunday. But we're excited. Hey, it's long hours. I did get a chance last night. I'll be the first one to tell you. I had a chance last night to go home, and at like 7:00. I had dinner with the family at home. Now, it wasn't at the dinner table. I did eat it on the couch, where I did fall asleep. And that was my first night at home before midnight in 4 weeks. So that was fun.
Life.
Yeah, so we had a blast. I want to get into this. We have a great guest on the show here today, Jake Cilik, who's part of the Cup.us, will join us here this morning, and a contributor, editor, one of, from what I understand, a significant amount of contributors and editors who are part of that. And the whole point of that organization is to help grassroots, right, teams and information across the country to help put more out there and make more information accessible to the fan who is trying to gain access to the U.S. Open Cup and U.S. Amateur Cup and all the things surrounding soccer in this country. So we applaud Jake and the organization for what they do, because, again, it helps shine a light on the game of soccer, which is extremely important. Now, we might have some differences of opinion about the U.S. Open Cup. We'll get into that this morning. And but again, we've talked about this before on this show. Like, we're not against the U.S. Open Cup. We just don't like the format. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that this morning, and among other things, with Jake, and get an idea of their perspective on the U.S. Open Cup, and we'll hopefully have a really good conversation this morning.
And just to piggyback off of that, when a Ferrari goes 0 to 60 in 0.36 seconds, you can't just take the 0.26 for the whole journey. You have to ride out the whole 3.6 seconds.
Are you trying to say that
I'm just saying that you have to, when you comment on certain things, you have to take the full context of it.
Oh, so are you saying?
I'm just prefacing. I don't know to what.
I've never driven one of those, Natale, so I
haven't either, man. I haven't either. I think what you're alluding to is what, again, if I'm reading between the lines, or maybe in this case, between the speeds, on the speedometer, right, is that you're saying that because we post videos to get responses, that maybe if someone was watching the full video, they might have more context. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we don't host a 15-second podcast. That's all I get out of it. Personally.
Hey, I you know what? our job is to create emotional responses. That's our job.
Oh, and Wangler did.
Yep.
did.
Our job is to create emotion, and emotion can come in a lot of different ways. It can come in like, oh, thank you, right? It can also come in, ooh, I don't like that, right? And to be fair, I have been the target of that a lot. I actually kind of like getting that a little bit. But yeah, hey, at the end of the day, this is all about what we do is about shining a light on soccer and the good, the bad, the ugly, right? And I think that's true with the Cup.us as well, right? I think that's the same, right? And so at least, I mean, that's the perspective when we talk with Jake. We'll get into that. But here's the thing. It's Friday. And yesterday we had some games on the platform. I think we had we were supposed to end up doing 5. I think we only ended up doing 4. Our biggest challenge right now, we've talked about this. The biggest challenge that we have right now in our growth is just getting teams to be able to figure out their tech to get us their feed. That's been the biggest challenge. We deal in VO Live land. I deal in Huddle land, Spidio land, production company land, those who call themselves production companies but are not production companies land. I mean, there's, I mean, and I do. I mean, and it's not meant to be disingenuous to those out there who try to do this, because if everyone could do it, they would. Okay. Because the biggest complaint that you see in regards to the U.S. Open Cup is the lack of good production in the early rounds. That's one of the biggest complaints that we hear. I mean, you hear it all the time. Well, this is a shitty production. And it's like, well, okay, well, it's either that or it's nothing.
Mm-hmm. You know what, Jake, I want to say something about what you guys do, though, or what we do at PMG and National Soccer Network, but mostly PMG because it's a different sport. But look at what you guys do for Oakland and their sports and the kind of production that comes out of that versus teams that are providing a VO camera or even a 1982 version of Huddle Cam or whatnot. You get what you pay for. I mean, if you put the ESPN
Huddle camera
Plus,
is like $4,000.
Well, now it is, but I'm saying in its earlier stages where it was just back and forth and it would chop because a butterfly would go across the screen here and then it would follow that instead of the ball. But you look at your ESPN Plus broadcasts and you'd be like, okay, is this coming out of ESPN or is it coming out of Premier Media Group? And then when they're providing the technology, aka a VO cam or some of these other streaming cams that are just following action, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, go back to the Ferrari. You can do that or you can do a Yugo. They still go. They're both cars, but what you get is what you pay for.
Real quick, Nancy, can you let me in on your TikTok live? I don't know. I sent you the request and you didn't.
I mean, you're watching it right now. It
just says I requested and it will not let me in. Just, let me in. Anyways, so I completely agree with you, John. And I think that there's a lot of nuances to this. Again, if everybody could do it, they would. And to be fair, every team we talk with has a varying degree of hats that they wear. Right. And they don't have the bandwidth to handle this. They don't have the bandwidth, to deal, with all the things that you have to deal with. And so it's just a thing. We had a company, I kid you not, we had a college internship or broadcasting class at the local university for a team we were covering here on Wednesday. I sent them an OBS package. So we send out a broadcast package to teams. So just in case, they need the help. And we sent that to them. They get to the stadium, they plug everything in. Like, do you see the signal? I go, nope. They go, what do we do? I go, well, how do you have your computer connected? And I go, we had the camera plugged right into the computer. I go, well, what kind of a camera is this? Well, we're connecting with HDMI. Okay. Do you have anything that's between the camera and the computer? And they're like, no, should we? I go, yeah, you have to have a capture device because you can't just plug an otherwise, you just can't plug a camera into the computer. It won't work. You need to have something that captures it. And then, encodes it and decodes it and sends it into the computer. Like, we don't have that. All right. Well, I guess we're not doing this game, because we, I mean, but that's what we, that's what we deal with. And so that's why what we try to tell people is that when they're bitching about, well, this is a shitty video feed. Well, yeah, it is a shitty video feed, but what would you, okay, it's either shitty video feed or it's nothing. It's like, it's nothing. And that's our problem, because the consumer today, or the viewer today, is so used to watching, ESPN broadcast with 75 cameras, 75 hosts and, whatever, that when they see a one camera shitty setup, they're like, no, this is terrible. What's the comparable?
Right. I will say it doesn't take a whole lot extra on their side to just make sure that they do the little things to make it look okay. I mean, that's the hardest part, is that we oftentimes are not a priority until we are desperately a priority. And we don't become a priority until about 20 minutes before the game, when they realize, oh crap, we can't get a stream. And I realize that that's never really going to change. The truth is that just like, they just don't, and a lot of these clubs just don't think about media. And it's because, again, we're breaking into a sphere, especially in the amateur space, where they're just not used to what exactly it is that we present in terms of not only our coverage, but everything else we're trying to accomplish. So that's the hard part. And you and I have had this experience too, JT, where, teams they're all excited. They get us signed on, they get us, the contract, and they're like, we're happy to have you, this, that, and the other thing. And then we won't hear from them. We won't hear from them until about 15, 20 minutes before the game. And we don't have an announcer. Our camera isn't connecting. Help. Like, do it for us. It's like, no, like, there is a level of you guys having to take care of stuff on your end, right? Because we're in one place, and that's the beauty of what we do. And we talked about the expectations of the consumer, obviously, with us doing games remotely. And it's nice. It's great to have that technology and that equipment, but it also lends itself to having people that are responsible on the other side and being able to get those things connected. So that's the other hard thing too, is like, maybe they just don't understand the tech. Maybe they think it's easier to do this than what it is, but that's also the hard part in navigating all that, is we are a priority, but only in the desperate moments leading up to a games, oftentimes do we become the priority. So again, that's something that we navigate around. And that's why, to anybody who's frustrated about maybe some of these not looking the greatest or not coming up on time, that's what we're dealing with on the other end. So logistics wise, it can be tough.
The first go around with these teams is always going to be the biggest and trickiest battle, but as we move along, they just become more easy. Just want to put this out there. We are officially over 532 live viewers right now on our Roku channel, which is huge. I mean, we've been seeing that grow for the last 3 weeks now. I'm thinking about that. There are 532 people who have in their home right now are watching us live across the country. Not just counting what's going on Twitter and all the other spaces that we currently provide, the feed to. But it's really cool to see that growth on our Roku channel. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring in our guest here today. And the thing I'm going to say is this. I'm a firm believer in bringing on people who either A, agree with us, or B, don't agree with us. And that's okay. We want to have a great debate this morning. I'm excited to bring on a contributor, a fan of soccer since 2010, editor who edits a lot of stories for the cup.us. And we're going to now welcome in Mr. Jake Cilik. And Jake, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, we're happy to have you. And we're going to get right into this because I think it's important that we do that. On either on Monday or actually on Friday of last week, I believe we actually had Jason Ashcraft. He came on the show. Jason coming on the show, big MLS fan of FC Cincinnati. And the reason we brought him on the show is because he made a sarcastic video about the sizes of crowds at the FC Cincinnati matches, which obviously the crowds were massive, and he was being sarcastic. And we just like we do with a lot of our guests, we do with Tim Sinclair from the Chicago Fire, who is a public address announcer for the Chicago Fire, who calls these games each and every season, MLS games, U.S. Open Cup games, and just like that, asking questions as it pertains to the U.S. Open Cup. So we're going to lead into this with on Tuesday. I got to see if I actually still have the tweet. Because you tweeted out that we didn't understand the U.S. Open Cup.
Just
And
from a
that-
full context standpoint, there's a lot of moving parts here, I think.
Oh, full context.
Yes,
We got that out of the way. I'm glad that was prefaced with that full context.
Sure.
Please proceed.
But there was a comment, and hey, you know what? You're here. Let's talk about this.
Sure.
And so to the viewer at home, to the person who is maybe not as familiar with U.S. Open Cup and maybe has chimed into our show, maybe they have, whatever. What is it that you were trying to portray in that comment? I'm going to find it here on Twitter in a moment. In regards to what it is that we maybe didn't understand that you could help us understand in regards to U.S. Open Cup.
Well, just listening to those first 10 minutes of the show, I think you do understand that at the lower levels, especially in the early rounds, infrastructure is paramount and it's hard to come by. I don't think a lot of people understand that when it comes to hosting a soccer game, it can get expensive real quick, especially if you want a high quality facility that can host all those cameras that you would want to see in amateur teams, and even some lower professional teams can't afford that. But if U.S. Soccer just said, okay, you can't host, eventually we stop running out of teams that can host matches, and then we don't have a competition, and that wouldn't be good. So we got to give a little bit of leeway at those lower levels for those teams, I think. And so when you have, say, a team that hosts and, there's a high school lacrosse game going on right before that, well, that was what was the best option for them to host that match, and you gotta go with it. And a lot of people see that as just like, oh, haha, funny, and some people see that as hey, this isn't being taken seriously. And I just think that when you you have to just be understanding that the soccer infrastructure in this country is not like this amazing thing yet. It's getting there. We are making progress year by year by year, but we're not there. And if we just start saying, oh, you can't host if you've got other things going on in the day, we're not going to have teams that can host matches at all.
Yeah, I think this is important. We're gonna go around here and talk about this. First and foremost, at no point in any of our conversations on this show, even in my own mind, have we ever said that teams at the lower levels shouldn't be hosting games. That has never been something that we've ever remotely said, ever. That's first and foremost. Second, in regards to this, I completely agree with you in regards to infrastructure. We have talked time and time again on this show about the lack of money and how much money it takes for teams to operate in this country. And that's not just at the highest levels, that's at the lowest levels. These leagues require teams to pay $6,500 fees to be in the league every single year. They require them to have to pay for field rentals are off the charts. Off the charts. The requirements, the mandates that leagues put on these teams to have a field ready 4 hours before the days of us just rolling up with our cleats in our hands and our shin guards in our pockets and going out to the field 5 minutes before a game and just playing it are over. Because you have to be at the field 4 hours ahead of time. You have to have referees show up an hour ahead of time. You have to have rosters delivered 90 minutes prior to the start of a match. There are a lot of things that make it very difficult for teams to be successful because it costs more money. I think the average amateur team right now is spending $30,000 a summer to operate their teams.
Yeah.
And that's not including a streaming cost. That's typically, okay, you want to stream, it's going to cost you more. And this is why a lot of teams have gone the route of AI, because it meets the minimum. They can live stream from it if they want to. And a lot of times they're getting it from their youth club, which they also happen to be a part of.
Right.
Because there's not a single, and you said you're a numbers guy and you dig into the analytics. Maybe you might know the answer to this question, Jake. Are there any amateur teams in this country that are actually making a profit? I mean, amateur teams.
I highly doubt it. Especially when you're trying to operate anything that's towards professional, like your U23 type setups that typically these teams at the amateur level are entering in the Open Cup. It's not making money.
And JT, yesterday, perfect example with Jamie Gilbert, director of coaching for FC Pride Elite here in Indianapolis, said that they don't try to water down the amount of players they have through their academy in order to play those fees. They hold on to, they're around 800, I believe, or some teams have 1,400 people to pay for those fees.
Yeah.
But that's what happens is they're not necessarily looking at the talent. They're looking at the pocketbooks of their parents and everything like that in order to make those fees. So right there is an invalid point, because we had actually someone on the front lines, Jamie, say that, we're risking the sponsorships and everything like that, giving us another thing on our plate to have to go out and generate sponsorships from mom and pop pizza shop or your local auto parts store, whatever it is, in order to get those funds, in order to subside those costs, instead of just having a flooded amount of players who may not necessarily have what it takes to be out there with the other players, but they're there because they have deep pockets.
Well, and not that I want to, pile on or it, but I do to kind of parlay this into something that I said a few days ago. And I know John, you guys appreciated when I did this, because I kind of lost my mind during one of our episodes. But Jake, I'm curious what you think about this too. We talk about the U.S. Open Cup. What is the incentive of playing in that cup? Well, first thing is the history. Okay, that's cool. It's over 100 years old. That's awesome. Nice. If we're going to get into semantics, awesome. But the other side of it too is the pot. The other side is the financial incentive in going on and winning that. Now, for the smaller clubs, if they happen to make, if the Pittsburgh Riverhounds went and they won it, obviously for their club, it would be everything. I mean, it's the equivalent of it's like in the hockey terms, like a Western Michigan winning a national championship. Like in a lot of ways, I figured that would put your brand on the map and it would change a lot of things. But the other side of it is too, when you talk about the pot, when you talk about the money that's available for these teams if they win it, for these smaller clubs, because they're not turning a profit or they're very close to breaking even, that would be in a lot of ways a difference maker. You want to compete against the best. And I even told JT this. I'm like, for these guys to go up against MLS sides, that's what you want, right? That is what you want. That's the goal. That's what you want to be able to do. But that money at the end of the line might actually positively impact the teams that are not a part of the MLS, but yet we get halfway through the tournament and now they start sprinkling in professional teams who, again, it's going to be hard to tell us otherwise, simply because of what we've seen, just don't take it seriously. They just are not that invested. So now you have these MLS sides that are going to go on and win this thing. And guess what? Their owners are still multi-millionaires. You know what I mean? LAFC just reached what, $1 billion in terms of the valuation of their program. So what is it about these MLS teams coming halfway in to play for this money that, frankly, they don't need? I mean, what is it about the format when you look at the format of the U.S. Open Cup? Do you not take issue with that at all?
I don't. There's a few things. So when you're talking about the money, first off, before this year, the amount of money that the U.S. Open Cup champion won was the exact same amount that the MLS Cup champion won. So, if the MLS Cup champion is important for the players to win that prize money and that bonus to their paycheck, that Open Cup was the same. Now it's double. This year they have double the prize pool. And there's a few reasons that happened, and I can get into that if you want. But I think that's going to change over time quite a bit as people go, hey, there's a lot of money for my MLS team and my paycheck to go out and win this competition when it only takes 5 games right now for an MLS team to win that. Second, you're talking about, quote, taking it seriously. And I think a lot of people conflate rotation with that. And I disagree that means that they're taking it seriously. I think a manager's job is to win every game in front of them. You have multiple competitions you're in. You're trying to win everything. And so it is smart. In fact, probably would be stupid to play your full side against a lower division team with weaker talent that you can win with rotated players. MLS have these huge academies. There's these great players that are coming out of it. That's why you saw Tacoma Defiance do so well. I think they've got some real good young guys that are going to come through their pipeline, and they can rotate those squads and still win. As we saw this year, they won just about every game, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 upsets if you're lucky. And so that's a risk reward type thing. Hey, I'm trying to win all these games, and I think based on my evaluation of the roster that I can get away with this. And then sometimes that doesn't work out, and that's on the manager. I don't think it's necessarily taking it seriously. I think it's just a manager that got it wrong and didn't do their job properly. And so that's different. When you're talking about not taking it seriously, if MLS teams were like, we're just not going to host, it loses us too much money, we're not going to host, we're just going to go on the road for as much as we can because U.S. Soccer will pays back our travel budget, however much it got super increased after the whole kerfuffle thing. That's not happening. Obviously, there are teams that are wanting to host. New England couldn't host at Gillette Stadium this past Tuesday because starting tonight there is lacrosse championships going on. So the NCAA needs Gillette Stadium the entire week to prepare for that. So that stadium was not available. They could have just said, we just won't host. We'll just go on the road to Chicago. And that would have been announced. In fact, Chicago couldn't host to the quarterfinals as announced yesterday at the draw. And so they had to do that. But they didn't. New England took the competition seriously and said, we're going to go find a venue. Was that aesthetically pleasing? Was that a nice looking venue? No, but as we just discussed, soccer infrastructure in this country is not where it needs to be. And so colleges have only 1,500 seat stadiums. And so that's what they found, and that's what they accepted. And U.S. Soccer said that was an acceptable stadium. We can get our equipment around it. A new rule this year is saying that, hey, if you're going to host it at an alternate venue and it's going to cost U.S. Soccer more to broadcast this match at this new venue, that's on you to cover that difference if you still really want to host. So that's where I kind of take issue with that, because when you look at these rules and you look at the decisions these teams have to make, I think they are taking it seriously, because if they really, truly didn't care, they wouldn't host. They would, beyond rotating squads to win these games, or end up losing, bigger times. When they lose, it's typically close games, in like Pittsburgh won on a last minute goal or in overtime or in penalty kicks. But no, like, these games are still close when they're rotating. So I think they are taking it seriously.
I'm gonna hop in here. So
Sure.
I understand your point of view. I think it's first important I say that. But the MLS teams do not want to travel if they don't have to. There's not a single team that's going to want to travel and go on the road and take all their people. They're not going to want to go and travel. It's easier to host. I mean, player-wise, I'm not talking about the infrastructure of game day environments. That's all stadium stuff. That has nothing to do with the player. I'm talking about players.
Sure.
If a coach is walking into an office and saying, "What would you rather do? Go on the road and play on the road, or host?" Well, I'd rather be at home. There's not a team on earth that wants to go on the road. I think we can all agree on that. Number two, okay, we are right now in the quarterfinals, right? Elite Eight, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, are we going to see full rosters in the Elite Eight? Are we going to see non-rotations from managers?
It all depends on the timing of when these games are. Half the issue with this, if you want to talk about the problems with the format, the problem is that
no, I think will we see again? I understand there's some complexities there, but will we see rotations in that roster?
Quite possibly. It depends on what a manager feels is best for their team to win all the games.
Would we see a rotation in the first round of the MLS Cup?
No, we wouldn't. But
we would not.
By that point, the Open Cup's done. The Open Cup's done. Everything's done. There's only playoffs.
No, I know. I know. I'm just saying, would we see a rotation in Champions League?
It's different when you're talking about again, MLS teams are playing Liga MX teams that are on their level. If you rotate, you will lose.
So that's
100%. I completely agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. This is why we asked this question in the first place. It's because, and again, we can talk about taking it seriously. We can call it whatever you want. Do I think teams take it seriously? No, I don't. And you want to know why? We heard it first and foremost from the public address announcer of the Chicago Fire, where he says the environment is different. It's a different environment. They're not rolling out all the stops for MLS games like they do. They're not bringing in all the extra bells and whistles like they do.
2 weeks to host in the middle of a season.
These teams knew.
You know, these teams that hosted in the round of 16 had 2 weeks to sell this game to their fans, and a lot of them aren't including them in season tickets. That's a whole different discussion. They're not including them. They're not, doing what needs to sell these games, and that's why you have that. Austin had a decent crowd. You know why? They did include those tickets in season tickets, and so fans
because
are
they
aware.
were playing a rival in Houston. Of course,
No.
tickets.
They made that decision well before they knew that it was going to be Houston. Hey, you're going to get these Open Cup tickets. So that's irrelevant.
I don't think this is not a thing where it's like we there's going to be anomalies and there's going to be moments where things are better than other moments. And I'm not naive enough to believe that. But again, we understand why MLS teams are in this. It's for, again, if they weren't, it would not draw as much attention. And to be fair, it's not drawing anywhere near enough attention as it should be. And again, it's because. And I, as a former coach, I understand why a coach is rotating his players. Because, again, if you lose a player who is a star in a U.S. Open Cup round of 16 match against, nobody USA, and then you go and lose that player the rest of the season, and it hurts your chance of going to the playoffs and winning a cup, you're going to get fired. So we know that. That's the problem, though. But at the same time, I also understand the idea that this is a chance for players who wouldn't otherwise get on the pitch. I also understand that. They want to have a place to compete. I get that. But does that hurt the cup? Does it hurt the cup? And this is what we're asking. Does it hurt the cup? Because you've got teams who are rotating their non-players in and putting players out there who wouldn't otherwise see the pitch.
It hurts it if your expectations is the playful starters. If people had reasonable expectations like they do in England, like they do in France, like they do in Germany, where, hey, we're playing a team that's 2 or 3 divisions down, we're not going to play our starters because we can get away with rotating this squad. Then everybody has the expectation of, hey, we want to win all these different competitions. And so that education has to change as well from American soccer point. So if your expectations are, well, why aren't we playing our starters every game? That's somebody who doesn't understand a coach and what they have to do to win day in, day out.
Do you think that players across the pond, if someone's watching Man U or Tottenham or anything like that, want to go to a match, spend all that money to see the second unit?
I think that
regardless if it's Europa Cup, regardless if it's a Champions League or a Premier Match League, do you think they honestly want to see the second 11 on the pitch?
I think they don't care. I think they're just there to support the
club. I kind of agree with that from Jake, and I'm not disagreeing with you, John. It's a great question, but the environment across the pond is so different.
Yeah,
they have the soccer is like blood; it's in their blood, it's ingrained, and they go watch soccer because it's just a thing to do. Here's not the thing to do. Here it's like list 17 on your list of 27.
But it doesn't help when these games are 2 weeks apart. In Europe and in a lot of other competitions, these cup rounds are a month apart. 5, sometimes 6 weeks apart. That's a lot more lead time to be able to sell these tickets, and that helps.
Don't they typically play like a week? And now the UEFA Cup, that's like they do it like they almost like it's like you got 3 games over the course of there's like a weekend where
like your home and away leg
is FA Cup? Is that what they do? Is it really a month apart?
Yeah, FA Cup, Copa del Rey, Coupe de France, Bundesliga. You look at all these; they're about a month apart. It's double the amount of time. And now we're going to have until July because we have Club World Cup and things. And U.S. soccer doesn't want these teams not being able to play their starters when they want to. That's why we have until July for these quarterfinals. Hopefully, these Major League Soccer teams that are hosting these games use that time wisely to sell this game because you have the time now to do that.
843, by the way, was the attendance of the Chicago Fire New England Revolution game. 843.
843 people?
843 people.
No, that stadium I've only sat though like 3,000. So I mean, it was
regardless that number only means
what it is. That whatever it costs Chicago to fly across the country just in the jet alone would have cost more than what it had New England. You think what's cheaper to rent, the Sister of St. Chewbacca Methodist High School field or Gillette Stadium? What do you think is
Providence College is a little bit bigger than that, my man.
I don't know how big it. Yeah, I don't know how big it is, but again, here is and lies the problem, right? Who cares? Who cares? Now we care. All four of us care. We care.
The people that are attending these games care, and I'd argue that's all that matters. The people that are showing up to these games care.
Yeah, they do, and I think it's just more frustrating than anything else because we talk it up so much, right? It's the oldest tournament in the United States, the history behind it, this, that, and the other thing, and then we see what, in a lot of ways, I think resembles exhibitions. You know, especially when you only have 800 people showing up to the game. I mean, that to me seems like a preseason game. You know, like it almost. To maybe the people who are directly invested in it, to people who are in the game, maybe it means something. But my question is, do they need the money? Do the MLS sides need the money? I mean, is this just for marketing's sake, just to make it more popular? Then what?
They don't need the money, but that's why when they talked about the financials during the whole, well, let's pull all these teams out, it's a little bit empty words because we know you're making hand over fist, and we know that your club valuations in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Like these few Open Cup games are not breaking your bank here. Like,
but they're losing money on them. That's why they don't want them. They're losing money. You're not making
okay,
money
but you're making X number of dollars on regular season games, and you lose.
Yeah, but again,
if that Open Cup number is minuscule, I'm not going to have any empathy for that.
Well, okay,
because you could have done better as well.
Yeah, but if we flip this, right? Let's just flip this for a second because we were talking about the MLS team. So I get it. Everybody looks at the MLS team like the man, right? They've made it great and they have all this money, right? And then there's the amateur side that doesn't. They have no money.
And the lower division professional side too.
Lower, yeah. They I mean, let's be honest. I mean, let's call what it is. The MLS has all of the money, and the lower league teams have none of it. They have none of it, right? And they're not getting a piece of this pie because they have zero. They have like 0.01, whatever the percentage would be of getting to a final and actually winning it, right? Mm-hmm. In today's climate, it's very unlikely, extremely unlikely. So isn't it disingenuous, just ingenuous for us to say, well, yeah, the MLS teams can afford to host a game and they can lose money on it, but this whole thing was created for an amateur environment to compete against professional teams and have a fighting chance, right? And have a fighting chance. And when the teams who are rotating players, the entire game or whatever you want to call it, and they're not putting all their money into it because they know they're not going to make any money. It devalues this damn cup. It devalues the cup. And my thing is this: I'm not saying get rid of MLS teams. I'm just saying just go to their literally go to their like academy teams and say MLS Next Pro. That's all that's what we're going to give you. And at least then, those players will take it seriously because again, they're fighting for that money. They're fighting for the opportunity to get to the first team because that's what they want to be. They don't want to be on second team. Nobody wants to be on second team. And then that also gives your other teams who are in this tournament who are fighting for their lives to go and play at the highest levels another fighting chance.
Right. And you see tons of times when a player from those lower division teams that are trying to get that big chance, they now get scouted. And we have seen time and time again a player from those teams that absolutely showed out for the cup get scouted and get signed by that team they literally just beat. I could list 3 or 4 different instances in the last 5 or 10 years where that happened. And that's why this tournament's important because those players are fighting just for that. Some of these players are like, I deserve to be on these pro teams. I can show them what I'm made of. And then the pro team goes, hey, yes, you're right. Let's sign you.
And from a league perspective too, I was just interested to hear what you have to say about this because JT and I have talked about this. It seems like to me, and I don't even know if it's possible to be honest with you, because the MLS is 3 decades now they've been at it, and there's really no one that's challenged the MLS, especially from just how valued that league is, just from a numbers perspective. Do you think this has a little bit to do with the USL trying to put pressure on the MLS too? Because obviously with them, with Pro-Rel and everything else like that, is this kind of their opportunity to start, maybe breaking into that space a little bit?
No, I don't think whatever MLS has been doing has anything to do with USL. I think they just literally saw that we are overcrowding our calendar due to the Leagues Cup that we created. And now there's a whole bunch of things going on here. And our players are complaining that they're playing too much. Well, what's the easiest target to go after? And then in their mind, it was U.S. Soccer and the U.S. Open Cup. I think that's all it played in. So
this conversation started because of a 15-second clip here, on Tuesday, whatever day we had the show. And as soon as I saw that, I reached out to you and said, hey, you're welcome to come on the show. And you were like, yeah, let's do this. Looking back at that comment, do you feel like you were wrong?
I don't think I was wrong. I think that there are different perspectives. I think everybody has some things right, and I think I've agreed with a lot of what you guys have said today on the show. But I just think that when you look at the logistics of these games are every 2 weeks, these teams are not including these tickets and season ticket packages. That's why you're seeing these quote bad attendances. I think it's a lot to do with that. The weekdays is definitely also a part in it too, but really only the FA Cup regularly plays on weekends when you look at it in Europe. Most of these cup competitions in Europe are mostly weekdays with final on a Saturday. And they got maybe the next big thing that the Open Cup could do is play the final on a weekend. But we're getting great attendances from the final, a lot of the semifinal games, and some of the quarterfinal games too. And so that's what I think. You work your way backwards. You start with the final is a good production. The semifinal is a great experience too. Now the quarterfinals, and you work your way back and you start raising those expectations and raising that level as you go back towards the tournament. And then, hey, maybe at some point in 30, 40 years, we have that soccer infrastructure. And now we can expect your lower division pro teams, your amateur teams to host in places, and we can have multi-camera setups. We can even have VAR in the entire competition. Right now, we're going to start having it in the quarterfinals. We could have VAR in almost every game in 30 years if that happens.
Yeah. The reason why I asked that question is this. Have you watched that whole episode? The one that you commented on?
I did not.
Okay. Yeah. And so this was what herein lies the problem in this country. And to be fair, this world. And Jake, please don't take this as if this is a direct target at you. No, okay. Sure. But we made a full 1 hour and 3 minute episode on Monday, like we do every day. And you saw a 15-second clip of a conversation that we had on Friday with one of our guests. And that sparked this comment, which was basically calling us out for being wrong. And the reason why
I didn't say your points were wrong. Let me be very clear. Your points were not wrong. I just say, if you're going to make those points, let's lay out the entire lay of the land here.
No, it said that they were invalid. He
said he wanted to add context. I'll back him up here. He said he wanted to add context to try and.
I mistyped, and that goes with the whole trying to type real fast thing and trying to respond quickly. Your points were not invalid, double negative. They were valid. I just think that if we laid out the entire board state here and everything that's going on, then okay, if you want to make that point, now at least you understand. Hey, we got 2 weeks between games. These teams are not including these games and season tickets. Hey, the soccer infrastructure in this country at the lower divisions not that great, and so sometimes you might have a high school lacrosse game before your game that preempts you.
But do you? And this is why I said this was a problem with this country is we look at something without all the information and are immediately, And again, this is not necessarily a target at you, Jake. It's a target at this whole thing because, again, it's very easy, right? But we didn't look at the whole video. Had you went and watched that whole video, the whole show would, again, not after not seeing it, but based on our conversation here now, would this comment have been different? Would you?
It probably would have been, but I still would have, as I think we're discussing, I think we have a differences of opinions. I think we still would have had heated discussions, and I have some facts to back me up on my point. I think those were important to bring up. So I'm not necessarily saying I would have said something different, but I also would have come at it from a. I was trying to be nice.
Yeah, no, and this is where, okay, so I'm going to give you my background just so that you know, because you said that you're an expert in U.S. Open Cup. Okay, I've been playing soccer. I've been played soccer since I was 5 years old. I played at very high levels, high school, college. I was a referee for over 20 years. I was a coach at a high level here both in club soccer, high school, and I've been a professional broadcaster for over 2,300 soccer games. Also calling ESPN, UPSL national finals. I know a thing or two about the game of soccer.
JT, hold on 1 second. Nate, what is your soccer background?
Mine was very limited. I played when I was very young, but to be honest with you guys, I mean, my breakthrough was in minor league baseball, so I'm still working in that sphere, but, started live streaming a lot of my stuff. I've always followed the national team. I've always, kind of been invested in watching them play, but not as much, from a real technical standpoint. JT actually found me. So I've actually kind of been immersing myself more in the soccer atmosphere, especially over the last 2.5 years, I think. So not as detailed as most.
What about you, John? Do you have a...
well, so like you, JT, I've been playing since, I was a wee tot, not a referee, but as a player. I myself have called, I don't know, probably over 700 to 800 soccer matches, do the state soccer finals here in Indiana, Indy 11, multiple USL 2, USL 1 championship, everything like that. And been a fan. Gosh, I've been a Man U and a UV fan for as long as I can remember. So, we do have some knowledge under our belt. And the thing why I want to bring that up is because the points that you saying that we were wrong on or invalid, regardless of what you meant to type versus what you did type, was you just contradicted yourself, telling us the reasons why those things happen with 2 weeks notice and lack of marketing and coaches switching or doing whatever they're doing. That goes to the fact that not a lot of people care. Yes, if we're calling, if I'm doing the PA announcing for Indy 11 and there's 12,000 people at Michael A. Carroll Stadium, the next night, if there's a US Open Cup match and there's 1,500 there, am I going to deter the way that I talk to those 1,500 versus the 12,000? Absolutely not. I know those people paid the ticket. I know they paid the money. I know they want to come see a good soccer match, but I'm not going to deter from those 1,500. But that means that 10,500 people didn't give a hoot about it because it wasn't important to them. You can roll your eyes. That's fine.
No, I'm not saying that.
Soccer, if you're a fan, hold on, let me finish. We've given you the time. Let me finish. If they have the time and they're a true fan, it doesn't matter if it's MLS Cup. If you say it's soccer, it's soccer. But everything that you explain, how we're not doing A, B, C, and D, is equivalating to the fact that people aren't showing up for these matches and enjoying it. That's the thing. It's just, you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. How many times in the past 10 years have you seen half-empty stadiums because nobody cares? Yes, not people that are there that care.
That's an incorrect narrative. But
it's not. No, Jacob. It's not. It's not an incorrect narrative. If people aren't showing up, that's a tall tale sign that people don't care. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. I see it every season. If people cared, they would be out and about. They would be doing something to correct that problem. What is U.S. soccer? What are fans doing? What is anybody doing to promote this in a sense that people care? We can talk about U.S. Open Cup. We can talk about MLS Cup all day long. People care about the MLS Cup because they know about it, because the league is taking something to do something about it. USA Soccer is doing something to take care of it. Nobody's doing crap on the higher levels to help out the U.S. Open Cup. So if people cared, we wouldn't even be having this discussion.
What's more important to you on a Wednesday night? Maybe your kid's recital or other game going on that you knew about for maybe a month ahead of time or 2 months, or a U.S. Open Cup game that you found two weeks out and wow, it's a Wednesday game. No, that's not the point.
people need bigger heads up if they're going to attend these games.
If it's not that's why there's a season
tell me what it is.
Tell me what the point of it. If that's not the point. There's a season
schedule at the start of the season. They know in January, February, hey, my home games for my league are on this team. Teams are not putting on their schedules even a date and saying, hey, we could possibly host Open Cup on this day.
But if they cared about it, they would.
No, they literally don't think about it.
Yeah.
They don't think about it until they're drawn into it, and they don't want to put a game on their schedule until it's officially happening. They may have reasons for that. They may not want to trick their fans and stuff. I'm saying if they actually let fans know, hey, we got these things going on, and you might get a ticket for that, especially if you're a season ticket holder. Hey, you might get a ticket for an Open Cup game on this date. And it could be against a lower division team, or it could be against the Houston Dynamo if you're Austin, or it could be against, whatever. If people have the bigger heads up, then it's in their minds and they can prepare and be like, hey, yeah, we got a home game coming up. People a lot of the casual fans don't see it as MLS regular season and Open Cup. They just see it as it's another soccer game.
That's probably what here lies the problem too.
And so the absolute lead time in doing that, so they can be like, hey, we've got a home game. Let's make sure that nothing else is going on that night. Or I'm a family. Let's make sure my kids have a babysitter. All these things. People are busy people, and you cannot just give them a 2 weeks heads up for a game.
No. Again, Jake, I don't disagree with the busy aspect of this. I don't disagree with that at all. But what I will tell you is this: is that those who care will make it a priority,
and that's why we have the attendances that are there. Those are the people that absolutely were aware, and that's also going to happen with education over time. And so I'm not disagreeing with you that the attendances are what they are, because they are. There are reasons for them, and I think it just is going to take time, and we have to have expectations
from your standpoint, if sitting in your chair as someone who is involved in this from a grassroots standpoint, how much time is needed? Is it 10 more years? I mean, we live in a land now where Chili's, which had the best quarter in the history of their company, because they hired 25 TikTokers to go into a Chili's and pull the Chili's, like the Nashville what do you call it? Mozzarella cheese sticks. It changed their entire business. So please tell me in what world.
I think it didn't help that for however many years, 25 years, that Soccer United Marketing, MLS's own marketing department, held all of U.S. soccer rights, and they said the Open Cup doesn't matter, which never made sense to me, but that's what they chose. And so for 25 years, their own company said that this wasn't important. And so the Open Cup is behind the 8 ball because of that. And so
when did that stop, by the way? When did that stop?
It stopped about 2 or 3 years ago, about 2023.
Okay. A question I have for you is this: so the own internal marketing for Major League Soccer was not promoting this on purpose, and I would again, I used to live in the corporate world. Now I have my own company, so it's different. So I am the corporate world, I guess, for my own company. But so things start from here and come down. Do you think that these ownership, these presidents and general managers of these teams, it starts there, right? And then kind of all the way down, right? And if a general manager sends a message like, this is important, do you think everybody jumps to attention and does that? Do you think that those teams probably do that? You think about it, you get a memo from your boss that says, do this, please, right now.
Yeah, right.
Do you hop to it?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, and my example, my wife, my honey-do list, I got to hop to it or I'm in trouble. Right. So that's the world we live in. Right. So I don't know. I don't see memos in MLS, but I would imagine that there's not maybe a memo coming down the pipe that says this is important, because if it was, everybody would take it seriously. So again, here's what our solution should be. Our solution should be, or our conversation should be about solving this problem, which is the fans care when the teams care, right? When the team cares, fans will care. Do you want to know how I know that? Because when the Detroit Lions started to fucking care, I can say that because I'm not being monitored by the FCC. They started to get better, right? So if your team gives a shit, then the fan base will give a shit. And the casual fan will make an effort. Give the tickets away if you have to. Make it a free night. I mean, it doesn't even matter anymore. Fill the fucking stands. It's an MLS team playing in a U.S. Open Cup. And to be fair, the fact that the prize money for the MLS Cup is only $300,000, to be fair, is insanity to me. You work your entire season for $300,000 to split? That just seems nuts to me. The soccer tournament, which is this 7v7 awesomeness in North Carolina, pays more money.
Yep.
And honestly, that's just like a for show thing. Let's be honest, nothing about that is serious. I love it. I think it's great. It is not a serious thing. It is like, let's go have some fun. Pat McAfee played in it, for God's sake. Come on. I mean, like that's not even, this is serious soccer. This is serious soccer.
And
we can't get seriousness.
Do you know what this is? And so
it's not you, Jake.
It's out of context or whatever you want to call it, but it is the same thing because of what the sports that happen here. So forget about what happens in Europe, South America, anywhere across the pond. It doesn't matter. Here in the United States, how many people give a shit about the NFL Pro Bowl, which are professional athletes, not necessarily the best of the best, but they announce them and then players go. How many people give a shit about the Pro Bowl?
Not many.
Exactly. But in football terms, it's not many because that's what we're institutionalized as, to say, you know what? It's the NFL. We want to see the best out there. We're kind of tired of they're playing flag football. They're not playing football. They're doing these crappy competitions of throwing a football into a baby bin 20 yards away. You whoop the effing do. But in soccer terms, how does it become that, we care, the fans that care, the 2,300 that show up to a stadium of 20,000, that they care, and there are serious fans about it. But when the Pro Bowl comes around, it's who gives a shit. If it's the same thing, so what's the difference? If it's Americanized in the way that we view sports as a fan base and how we view soccer as an entire country, how is that any different?
It's different when the teams actually do their jobs and do things to sell these games. Why aren't these games included in season tickets for your season ticket holders?
It's the same with the Pro Bowl, though. It's the same with the Pro Bowl. The
Pro Bowl is a separate game. You're talking about apples and oranges here.
In-season thing. That's what I'm saying here. Just take one Pro Bowl game versus one U.S. Open Cup match game, where 2 weeks before you have every start, you have Trevor Lawrence. I gave you a bunny on that one. Mm-hmm. Trevor Lawrence is starting quarterback, and then you have King Henry at running back, and you have Jalen Hurts at quarterback on the other side. But then 2 weeks before, it's Gordon Minshew is going to start at quarterback. Who's going to go to that? Nobody. And it's the same premise that you're getting these updated rosters and everything prior to.
You guys ever have that situation where you're like arguing with someone and then like you spend like the 20-25 minutes, however long it is, and eventually you wind your way around to the very end and you realize you're agreeing and you're just arguing in different ways? I feel like this has a little bit of that involved in it, because Jake, you just said for 25 years they didn't market it correctly because they didn't really care to market it all that much. And that's pretty much the premise of what we've been saying for a while. And Peter actually left a really good comment. I want to put this back on the screen again. The U.S. Open Cup needs restructuring and remarketing. And I would agree with that. So let me put you in that chair, right? It could be the owner's chair. It could be anywhere else. How do you market this better? You can give specific steps, specific things you would do or change to actually get people in the damn stands.
Sure. I would, if I'm an MLS executive, I would totally include this as a season ticket for at least until you get to a quarterfinal or semifinal, when that money starts to change a little bit. But for your round of 32, round of 16, any of those types of rounds, that ticket's included in your season ticket. Period. End of story. Austin FC does this. There's a few other teams that I think do this. That needs to be across the board. Second, I would need to, and this might happen with the potential move to a fall spring thing that MLS keeps talking about. But I would come to U.S. Soccer and say these games need to be spread out even more. They need to be 2 weeks is not enough time for us to sell to the casual fan. The casual fan's already got something going on that night. We can't sell to them if they've already got something going on that night. We need 4 weeks, because a month is probably enough time for somebody.
theoretically to have that time. I think that has to happen. And if you get those two big things to happen, you'll start to see those attendances start climb as people go, oh, hey, I got a great game to go tonight. And third is education. And some of these teams are doing that. Some of them are not. It needs to be across the board. It needs to be hey, here's a great explainer every year about what the Open Cup is, why it's important, why we're playing for this. Here's how much money these teams are playing for. Here's why that's important, because it's more money than MLS Cup. I mean, they're not going to say that, but this is why it's a big deal. Have players talk about why it's important. When this whole thing happened, media companies like CBS and ESPN went to these players after MLS tried to pull out and asked them, what's your thoughts on the Open Cup? Every single one of them talked about why this competition was important to them and why winning this trophy was important to them.
No, yeah, we're not exposed to that, and maybe that's the point. We don't know. That's the whole thing. And I said that when we were talking to some of our previous guests. I was like, for some reason, like the Formula One seems more important than anything soccer related, because we actually see individual Formula One drivers in the media. I see their face, I know their names. So I for what it's worth, and I know we've kind of come after you a little bit. I thought you've handled it well, but that is the point of what we're trying to say. They're just not. We don't know.
From a U.S. soccer standpoint, they're doing so much more than they used to, for sure. And it really helps. They write constantly about the lower division teams and stuff. They're writing feature articles weekly, sometimes multiple times a week, as we get closer to these rounds for these teams, to explain to them why a burrito shop in San Francisco is the coolest dang team to talk about, or why, this player from Seattle or whatever is playing so importantly for this Open Cup because of the history that he has from Ozzy Alonso that's played for Charleston from the lower division side and worked his way up and then won all these competitions. They're talking about these stories in U.S. soccer, and we are too, obviously, and we kind of cover it from a game day perspective and not a whole lot of feature content. We just don't have the time. People at U.S. soccer are paid for this and have the time to write these stories. And we have a lot of the history. We have great historians on our staff that talk about the history of all these games from the 70s and 80s. We have shirts in our store that reference all of that. But U.S. soccer is talking about these teams, and so they are taking that very seriously and investing heavily in that. And then you also talk to somebody like maybe David Wright, the CCO at U.S. Soccer, is when they brought everything in-house, all of a sudden now they're making 2-3x the amount of sponsorship and commercial dollars than they did under Soccer United marketing. And so what did they do this offseason? They went and they talked to all the soccer stakeholders and said, hey, we're making a lot of money. How can we invest in your grassroots and all these things? And one of those things I think that was a result of that was the double prize pool, because what a lot of people don't understand when it comes to the finances of the operation of the prize pool is it's actually the prize pool before probably this year was paid by the MLS owners through the hosting fees to host these games. Hosting fees plus entry fees was roughly equal to prize money plus travel reimbursement budget. That was an equal budget. We have documents that can prove this. Now, if you're doubling prize money, but those hosting fees were not being doubled, okay, that's an imbalance. Somebody's got to pay that. It's got to come out of U.S. Soccer's budget. Well, now they have that money from selling all these sponsorships to New York Life, Marriott, all these different companies now that sponsor, and they're making 2x, 3x money. They can now spread that money around, spread that wealth
around. First off, Jake, I will also mention that handling yourself. Again, thank you very much for, we were 3 versus 1 in some cases here today. And here's what I want to end this with. As a fan of soccer, as a fan of the U.S. Open Cup, are you happy with the current climate?
I'm never happy. I'm never happy with it. I always think it can be better. Let me make that very clear. I think it can be better, but I just think people's expectations might be at level 10 when maybe they need to be more like level 5. We're still building. Change is slow. It's very slow. And it's going to take some time, and this isn't going to happen overnight. So have those expectations and raise them little by little as the years goes on.
Isn't it our job, though? Isn't it the job of the Cup.us not only to promote the tournament, but also to challenge the tournament to be better?
Oh, we challenge when it's necessary. We were challenging why these games weren't being fully broadcasted from first round to the final. U.S. Soccer has changed that. We were challenging, why isn't this prize money huge? It's now doubled. These things from the financial and from the operational standpoint. Why were these games being held at the little small stadiums? Well, U.S. Soccer made a rule change this year. Pro teams are almost required, and I'm saying almost because there's a few reasons for that, but in most circumstances, they have to host their Open Cup games at their normal stadium. No longer can they have the option to just go, well, we're going to host it at, we're not going to get a lot of people, so we're not going to host it. U.S. Soccer is saying you can't do that because it costs us too much money to then broadcast at that alternate stadium, whereas you have a normal stadium with all the setup already ready to go, and it costs us a lot more. If you want to change that, it's on you, and you have to have circumstances like your stadium's unavailable. And so they are making the changes little by little, and we're demanding these things. And so change is slow, but it is happening. And there are little things that are happening. And before you know it, that snowball is going to start rolling.
Jake, we appreciate you stopping on by this morning. Always welcome to come on and talk U.S. Open Cup, talk soccer in this country. You guys do a great thing there at the Cup.us. We appreciate you stopping on in and being a part of episode number 91 for us here on this Friday morning.
Happy to be here. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
No, yeah, we're glad. So stick around. We're not going to go anywhere quite yet. But what I would say is this. Here we go.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, it keeps doing it.
Did it.
It doesn't. I don't know what to do.
Down a little bit. You're fine.
Oh,
there you go.
Oh boy.
We got you now.
There we go.
0 for 6.
0 for 6. Episode 91 is in the books. We appreciate you stopping by.
Gosh, man, that was so. I haven't had that much fun on a podcast in ages. I've only done a few of these. Usually, I just get these softball questions. You guys were engaging with me. I love that because I love having passionate discussions. And Nathan, you were right. We were just talking around in circles about the same thing, and just for
I think we all agree.
I think we all agreed on that. And right. I think. Well, let me ask you this: when you first heard and learned about what the U.S. Open Cup was, what were your thoughts about that?
I'm a sucker for history, man. So it got me excited because of
when you learned that MLS teams have to play other teams that are outside their league that are in this country. I thought that was the coolest damn thing I've ever heard of.
Jake, we will continue this conversation. We're out of time, but thank you very much. We'll be right. Well, we're going to end it. We'll come back in the green room, but thank you very much, Jake Sillick, the Cup.us here on this Friday morning, episode 91 in the books.